Welcome and thank you. We have some delegations from the RCMP in the gallery, and thank you to all viewers to join us for the June 10th regular council meeting. I call the meeting to order at 1 p.m. and I ask council members if they have any added items to the agenda today. Thank you very much. Seeing none then, I would please ask for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the agenda for Monday, June 10th, 2024 for the regular and closed council meeting agenda be approved as presented.
Very good, thank you. And I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried, thank you. Moving to page 3 of our agenda now. Item 2A, regular council meeting minutes of May 27, 2024. If there's no errors or omissions, I would ask for consensus. Do we have consensus? Thank you, then. I would say that the consensus for the minutes of May 27th. And move down to the next item, please, and we will go to page 8 of our agenda. And this is the RCMP quarterly report, and I would invite, are both speakers coming up, or will it just be you, Staff Sergeant Warren? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. My name is Staff Sergeant Warren Wright with the Olds RCP, and I have with me Corporal Leif Svensson. And Leif is the Acting Sergeant Operations NCO, and he was looking after the Olds detachment in my absence last month. So I just wanted to introduce him to Council in the event that none of you have ever met him before. He's currently the second in charge and incredibly indispensable.
I will say that I certainly like the style of the report that was handed to council for this meeting, for sure. It was well-written. Thank you.
Yes, we are very fortunate to have Corporal Svensson. He comes from an emergency response team background. He has 20 years of service, so it's really great to have that wealth of experience. I am here today to present the quarter 4 of the last fiscal year for the RCMP, which is January 1st to March 31st of 2024. In your council package, you would have received a municipal policing report, a letter directed to Mary Judy Dahl concerning the change in command at the K Division headquarters. We now have Deputy Commissioner Rob Hill, who is the commanding officer for K Division Alberta, or Alberta RCMP as it's been rebranded. And we were fortunate enough actually to have a drop-in visit with him. Late last week, out of the blue, he just happened to be driving through and popped into the detachment to say hello, and stayed for about an hour. So we're very grateful to meet him that way. And there should be some statistics here as well. Okay. Of course, rather than me regurgitate the reports for you and speak directly to the statistics, I would like to field questions.
Sure. Be great. I noticed that you do have some acronyms, and you also have explanation to some of these definitions, but I couldn't find anything to help me with what F or VSU means.
Victim Services Unit.
I should have known that.
Chinook Sarge, Victim Services Unit.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you very much. Does council have any further questions? Okay, I've got Councillor Wilson, then Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to Staff Sergeant Warren Wright. Just more like how the numbers come together here. I think overall the trends and so on seem encouraging for our town for the most part. But if I look, say, on page 19, I couldn't, and my apologies if I've asked this question before, but if I look at something like your total provincial traffic line, you know, you've got 116, 131, 80. How do I get to those numbers? Because I tried to play around a bit just doing my simple adds.
Okay, so these are generated in Edmonton, so
Okay.
let me just double check here. So other provincial stats,
Total provincial traffic on
total
page,
provincial traffic.
yeah, if I'm on page 19. Yeah.
Let me just check my copy.
And perhaps not a fair question for you.
Bring
given-
paper as a backup. Total provincial traffic, okay, so I have year to year, and I have, is it the year to year, 2020 to 2024 you're referring to?
Well, I'm looking at 2024, and it
Okay.
says, if I'm reading it right, 192.
Correct. Then that would refer to the amount of traffic complaints that we received in 3 months, as opposed to charges. Those are
Okay.
complaints.
All right.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, when I try and play around with some of the numbers, I don't get to 192, but if it's complaints and charges, then that helps
I believe,
clarify.
I mean, the charges usually either stem from the complaints or they're proactive traffic stops, but I believe that that figure is specific to the amount of complaints that were fielded over that 3-month period.
Was that okay? You're good with that? Thank you. Councillor Ryan?
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. Through you to Sergeant Wright. I have something similar along those same lines, talking about the traffic.
Okay?
The provincial traffic code numbers 23 to 24, there was an increase of 85%, and so we've got 192. Now, I'm just wondering, I guess my question is kind of twofold, it's the same thing. One, is it because we have, of our priorities, that have asked for an increase in that area? And two, could there be something that was being focused on at that time to make the difference? Because that is an 85% change from 2023 to
Yeah,
2025.
it's certainly an increase. I mean, there is definitely a response to concerns with provincial traffic in the town of Olds, and those were responded to through a directed traffic enforcement program, which was very productive. So I feel like there was an increase in town, and then there was a policing response in terms of enforcement to increase those numbers. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That sounds great.
Thank you for that. CEO Williams?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Bit of a off-topic question, Staff Sergeant Wright. Our current 2025 budget survey is open right now, in fact, and one of the questions concerns RCMP, and not to preempt it because it's still some time before it closes and certainly more time before it comes to council, but in asking the priorities that the public believes the RCMP should focus on, by far running away with it are neck and neck property crime and drug enforcement, or by far in the lead. I'm just wondering if you could provide a Coles Notes version on how those might be considered almost the same issue, and is there also match kind of council's priorities year over year to the RCMP, and what the relationship is between each?
Between property crime and drug enforcement? Okay. So we see the absolute correlation between the use of drugs and the need to generate income to purchase drugs, and doing so by committing property crime. They're completely related and correlated. So if we can address the drug problem, that should mitigate and reduce the property crime. Ideally, that's what we're striving for.
Thank you. I would like to go to your priority here, number 4, with regards to your project Safe Roads. I found that really fascinating to read. How often do we do that? You had stopped 142 vehicles and 45 drivers. Only 9% were found to be over the provincial, and you also took licenses away immediately. What?
I think it was it's an interesting stat in that, like I said, like you said, 9% of the drivers were found to be over .05 provincially, which is the provincial standard. 0.8 is criminal, which is a good thing that it's so low. It's definitely reflective of people taking responsibility and understanding the law and doing the right thing by not consuming alcohol and then driving. For sure. The Project Safe Roads was something that was brought about again in terms of ongoing conversations between the town and myself with regards to addressing public safety on the roads, and we started it in December, and we ended it at the end of February, and it was very, very successful. And we did say that we were going to continue it on, but just sporadically, periodically, and we weren't necessarily going to announce when we're doing it. But it certainly wouldn't necessarily be 3 months in a row. It might be, you know, a Friday night, or it might be a Tuesday afternoon, or something like that. Or especially high-traffic weekends that we got coming up this summer.
It's great to know. Excellent. Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan, through you to Staff Sergeant Wright. I noticed under your priority 1, when you're doing your curfew checks and everything, which I know is time-consuming for your officers, but
Right.
I do see here that you had 5 new drug investigations which were open in this quarter, Q4. That would be in your geographic area, though. That wouldn't necessarily be right within the municipality, correct?
Well, no, this is specific to the town of Olds. Yeah, yeah. Because I split my reports up in terms of the Municipal Policing Services Agreement, which this is, and then I have a different report for the Provincial Policing Services Agreement for the town of Bowden and the counties. So that number would be specific to Olds.
Okay, thank you for that. It's for the clarification is rather alarming, but thank you for that clarification.
Well, thank you, Deputy Mayor, for that question, because I would then assume the entire report then is specific to our municipality.
Yes, yeah, I split it.
That's very good question, because that solves an answer if somebody else is thinking the same. Any other questions? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Again, through you to Staff Sergeant Wright. Just, there seems to be a little bit of a bubbling of interest around things like scooters, what I'll call mopeds and scooters, and vehicles that some folks use to transport themselves. Maybe perhaps some of our elderly citizens. Can you just talk for our many listeners, viewers, talk a little bit about enforcement, traffic enforcement, how those laws apply to those various means and modes of transportation, and can they be on the road? Do they all have to be licensed? Some of them are licensed. I know it's maybe a broad-ranging question, but.
You know, I've heard the same thing. I think that there needs to be a lot of education within the residents of the town of Olds as to what is a prohibited vehicle and what is not a prohibited vehicle, and what the difference between a mobility aid is and something that's simply not. This has obviously come to a bit of a bubble, like you say, recently. So a mobility aid is a device used to facilitate transport in a normal seated orientation of a person with a physical disability, whereas a moped includes a vehicle with a motor that's propelled by an engine and has a displacement of not more than 50 cc, and it has a higher top speed than a mobility device. It depends on the size, it depends on what's driving it, it depends on how much cc or horsepower it is, and it depends on the speed. Mobility aid is your standard, and I realize for the viewers at home they can't really see, it's your standard red scooter that you see the seniors operating. Whereas some of the prohibited miniature vehicles include electric scooters that you see some residents operating. In fact, we saw one on the way here. Pocket bikes, golf carts, motorized skateboards, go-karts, personal transporters. And then there's also the other ones that, I'm just trying to think of the name of them. A what? Geoscooters, right, which are essentially deemed by the province to be an electric vehicle, right? You can't drive them on the road because they're not deemed to be licensable or insurable per se for public road operation, and you can't drive them on the sidewalk or municipal pathways because they're too big. So right now, the RCP detachment is taking a view of just education, because I think a lot of people just don't really know.
That's correct. They're always asking council and/or our CAO.
But it is absolutely provincial legislation. As far as I know, there's really no municipal bylaw to do with it. It's the province. So.
Thank you very much for that. And Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to Staff Sergeant Wright. So for clarification then, the actual mobility scooters they are allowed on the roadway then?
They're not, they're allowed on sidewalks and public paths, but not on the roadway.
Thank you for the clarification.
And sorry if I didn't
Yeah.
before, but thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl, and through you to Sergeant Wright. Just to go a little bit further along in this conversation, have you thought of ever perhaps attending one of the seniors or the seniors buildings in town to give them the information, have a little discussion with them? Because I know that we do have quite a few seniors who do ride the mobility, or do have mobility scooters or wheelchairs, electric wheelchairs that they use on the roadway, and it does put them at risk, and I'm always worried to see them running down the road with traffic being around them. I would hate to have any injuries involving that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering if we do any kind of education that way. Is that your department or our department?
It's absolutely between us and perhaps municipal enforcement, and maybe the director would like to speak to this, but certainly we have our community resource officer, and this is going to be stemming from this meeting. He'll be tasked with creating some type of open house, a workshop for seniors. Anybody can show up, and we can talk about what's allowed, what's not allowed, road safety, that kind of thing, because I think it'll just improve everybody's safety in our community.
Excellent
Thank you.
idea.
Director Andrew, and then we'll go to Councillor Cumming.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just speaking on a couple of points of things that I've heard to support Staff Sergeant Wright and some of the questions and answers received. So the mobility scooter issue is certainly one that's widespread. There's a lot of, there is some misinformation or lack of understanding of how it's applied, who has the authority to make this legislation, which right now we're following provincial legislation. The municipality cannot supersede that legislation. So there is no room for us to make exemptions or change the law that's from the provincial level on which vehicles are classified as prohibited versus not. And the one thing is on our information, trying to gather that, is that we've taken a look through municipal enforcement about the different areas like the seniors' home, about where these things might pop up. And so the one thing that's been happening and what's come is that an educational opportunity was made where we're seeing these. In the last week there was a few. It's warm and the weather's changed, and so now everybody's out and about, and so that's where this bubble comes. And the problem is that this isn't selective enforcement, this is selective education. And the thing that comes with that is that we would be remiss if we did not inform people that operation of such a device on a roadway is contrary to the Highway Traffic Act, and that there is consequence for that. If there was, it's not so much about the fines or the penalties involved in doing so, but if there was actually an accident. And that's the difference why mobility aids are not classified as a vehicle allowed on a roadway, is that they're not safety rated. They don't have crash protection such as roll cages, seat belts, things like that, and that's what makes this determination. And so the hard part is that if somebody on a mobility aid was actually hit on the highway, they're operating as a motor vehicle, and that person actually assumes a lot of the liability in that accident, and they're also not insured or registered. And so that puts a lot of people in a really tough spot, that you could really potentiate a situation. And the last thing that we want is an accident involving one of these. So the reality is that the actions that are witnessed is when these are operating on a road, that's absolutely a hard stop. That is just not a good action, and it's not safe for a lot of reasons. Operating on a sidewalk or on a trail system, now a little different story, but the whole premise is that we do have to be very careful, because the province sets aside which vehicles are considered prohibited. They don't have all-inclusive pictures on their literature, which is what we've determined in the last few days. And so we're going to strive to get better clarification of that so that they're listed. You look on a public website of these devices that they're being sold, and they indicate that this is a mobility device. Well, it's sold as a mobility device, but even in their fine print it says this is not medical aid support and this is for recreation purposes only. And so it's not false advertising, it's just advertising that is not absolutely crystal clear, which leads to a lot of controversy. And so that's a difficult one for us to capture because we don't know all of the companies that make these, but we're going to endeavor to try to make sure it's very clear. And the province is dealing with this. There's lots of concern about it right now, and so when they change their mind on something or keep it the same, it's fine. We're going to follow it. So hopefully that adds to the conversation.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor? Okay, I've got him on the list. I'm sorry. I thought you were going to just respond to this. Go ahead, Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the director answered a little bit of the question there, but as many of you know, I'm in the retail business. We have lots of retail legislation that dictates what we are allowed to sell, what we're not allowed to sell, how we are allowed to sell it, what warnings have to be part of that retail purchase. For instance, I'm not allowed to sell body armor. Found that out the hard way, and then donated a set of our body armor to the RCMP. But the scooters are being sold by people, and the scooters of all these different natures are being sold at a Canadian Tire or wherever in our town. Is there not any legislation that requires them to tell the purchaser that this item is actually not allowed to be used in the area that they're being sold? Or is that something that maybe we can, as legislators, look to petition to the provincial government to say this is a problem? You've got to let the customers know they're not legally allowed to use the things they're buying in the area they're buying it from.
Director Andrew, would you like him to speak?
I would.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant Wright. So in this particular case, Councillor Cummings, yes, you're correct. And what we've found on some websites of some devices, again, I can't say it all because I'm not going to proclaim to say I know them all, but the small print does indicate check with local jurisdiction or authority for approvals, right? And those are always, and it does give that disclaimer that, again, you can claim a lot of things about what it is or how it is. And the problem is there's no automatic classification. Again, you can't buy a device and then say, well, it's a medical support device without there being some justification or a check mark. And again, I don't even know how that classification system works through the province as far as, what criteria has to be met to meet it, or, sorry, what criteria need to be satisfied in order for it to be classified as a medical device. I do know the one thing, again, is that most of this comes down to is its operability on a roadway. It's not as simple as having brake lights and signal lights. Again, there's a certain level of crash protection that has to be afforded and or the ability to go a certain speed. And then it also gets into an issue of licensing. Because a vehicle is now registerable and insurable on a roadway, now there is some provision required for an operator's license as such to drive that, such as like a moped. So you see, teenage kids driving mopeds around and some adults, but you still require a Class 7 operator's license to drive a moped on a public street and show proof of insurance and registration.
Thank you for that, Director Andrew. Councillor Ryan? Oh, I thought you were saying you were just telling me that, Councillor, okay, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to either CO Williams or Director Andrew. I apologize if I've missed this already, but have we started to do an education piece either through our website and our social media, and perhaps maybe even the local paper would pick up on this? What types of vehicles are considered scooters, e-scooters, that type of thing already? Because I know we have seen some of that information come through to council, but I'm not sure what has been provided through those mediums yet. And I apologize if I've missed it, being away the last few days. I haven't been really checking up on those types of things.
This issue only came to light late last week, I think, so we'll get something out there, though.
Thank you. I would strongly recommend it because that could probably help mitigate some of the negativity that we're seeing through social media.
You. We'll have Director Andrew would like to answer, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Ryan.
Sorry, and yes, so this information is on the website, and it was published when we redid the traffic bylaw recently, but with certain events coming to light, we did identify that, yes, the pictures are not reflective of the total list, so we're working on trying to make that a little clearer with more definitive answer and background around it being a provincial piece of legislation.
Thank you. I have to go to Counselor Ryan, and then can I come back to you? Oh, it's supplemental to what's on the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you for that information. I was aware of some of it on the website, and I apologize for that, but I really do think that maybe we should make our citizens and our residents aware of where they can find this information out and continue on with the education process that the RCMP and our municipal enforcement have already started.
Counselor Ryan?
Thank you very much, Mayor Dahl. Just a FYI, I do know that this is provincial legislation we're talking about, and the province is reviewing currently its legislation with regards to the e-scooters, golf carts, things like that. And there is a pilot project underway right now in a community for the golf carts. I can't remember which one it was. I think it's Sylvan Lake. And there could be an opportunity for bylaws or communities to have bylaws put in place to allow certain ones. But at this point, it is under review, from what I understand, and so there could be some things changing in the near future. And it all stemmed from Alberta Munis that put a couple of resolutions forward with regards to this particular issue. So hopefully we'll have even more information from the province coming down the pipe at some point.
Thank you. Counselor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and I'm not sure if we've concluded this discussion, which has been good and healthy, but I'll take us down a sharp right turn elsewhere with a very short, simple question through you to the staff sergeant, and that is, educate me on bike patrols in town, and can I expect to see you or Corporal Svensson on your 10 speeds patrolling around this summer, or?
I don't think you're trained, are you? You're not trained. You know, we ourselves are not trained to operate the bike. We have to take an extensive, very in-depth course to qualify to take the bike course to operate the bikes in town. And I believe it's for insurance purposes for us. But that being said, we do have 3 members on staff that are trained, and now that it is spring, and I think the inclement weather should be behind us, you will see more of that, especially during events. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. And now we'll go to Counselor Walsh.
You know, going a different route. I'm just curious of the person's reported missing. It says 3. I wonder if those ever get resolved, or if those are just ongoing.
Yes, they do, yes. In all cases, as far as I know, in the town, we don't have any, in the last 3 months that we're speaking to this quarter, I don't believe that we have any unresolved missing persons cases. Quite often, they're classified as missing persons. The majority of them, like if they come in as, I haven't seen my son in a day, then we will classify that as a missing person as opposed to a query to locate. But then once we start the file, we don't finish the file until we've literally put eyes on them. We have a very, very high clearance rate on those because they're treated with the utmost priority. But no, as far as I know, we don't have any outstanding missing persons in the town.
That's a very good question. All right. There's no further questions at this time? I'd ask for a motion. Thank you, Counselor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council accepts the Royal Canadian Mounted Police quarterly report as presented.
The motion's on the floor. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That's carried. And once again, thank you both for your time, for being with us this afternoon. You can say whatever you like.
Constable Price has put together a youth camp this summer, and we're utilizing the fire department's facility. But it's called a Youth Academy, and it's from July 22nd to July 26th. He's been identifying up to 14 candidates between the ages of, I believe, 14 and 17 to participate in this academy, and I know that 9 of which are from the town of Olsen itself. So, it simulates, to a lesser degree, it simulates going through depot. So there'll
That's
be
amazing.
marching, and there'll be, we're providing with some level of uniform, like T-shirt, hat, that kind of thing. And there certainly will be an opportunity for council to check it out.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Can you please leave that with our legislative clerk, please? And she'll make sure that we all get that sent to us, so we keep it in our calendars.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
That is excellent. Thank you both again for your time,
All right.
and have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now move down to page 22 of our agenda, please, and that will be a public hearing. And I am looking to the gallery at this time, and we do not have any persons in the gallery for the public hearing. Do I still open it and close it then? All right, at this time, I call the public hearing open at 1:31 p.m. I declare the public hearing open at 1:31 p.m. I will still ask the development officer to explain the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and/or municipal land use planner, as it is Kyle Sloan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This land use bylaw amendment is part of a series relating to camping regulations in the town of Olds. The land use bylaw only has one item related to this, and it already exists, but it is the wording is being adjusted so that it's consistent with our other bylaws. So the proposed amendment is to rewrite section 2.2C as a holiday trailer, motorhome, camper, or other recreational vehicle parked in a residential land use district may be used for living and sleeping accommodation for a maximum period of 30 days per annum. Temporary living accommodation in a recreational vehicle or tent is prohibited in all other districts except as designated by council. I did receive one phone call when this was first advertised a couple of weeks ago from a resident who just wanted clarity on, they thought that we were adding the regulation allowing camping in residential districts and on streets. I informed them that recreational vehicles parked on public roads are not regulated by the land use bylaw, as this bylaw regulates properties themselves.
Williams?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and I'll just compliment Kyle's comments there, touching on all three bylaws before council. As Kyle mentioned in the land use bylaw, this one we are adjusting the definition of camping to exclude non-residential areas, which they are not excluded at present, and prohibiting temporary living accommodations in vehicles and tents on town-owned property. The following bylaw you will see is the CSB amendment, which introduces and defines the concept of open spaces, but for the same purpose. It matches the language of camping on non-residential lands and town-owned lands as well. And then the traffic bylaw that prohibits a clause, introduces a clause prohibiting sleeping in vehicles on town-owned property. And all those are related to specific instances that we have encountered the last 2 years. With the traffic bylaw, most notably at Rotary Park, with the non-residential issue, there's multiple cases that we have found with the RCMP bylaw and that exist right now in a less severe format. And overarching this, of course, is the rise of people experiencing homelessness, which is something we have been fortunate to not have proliferate to a large extent. However, we're expecting this issue to grow. So being proactive is the intent of these three bylaw amendments before council today. But shall deal with the LUB first and take any questions on the other ones, should council have them.
Thank you. The request for decision as well, spoken within for the incidents of encampments. Did you have anything further to say? Seeing that, oh, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, you have a question? No, go ahead. Because I was going to go, seeing there's no public members in the gallery, I'll go directly to council. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and through you to either CO Williams or our our community, our planner, Mr. Sloan. When we say non-residential, would that include, when you say non-residential, does that include like somewhere in the light industrial where we've got a construction crew that might have a temporary group of men coming in that would bring their holiday trailers and park within their own property, within, say, a fence or something? Is that prohibited as well under this bylaw?
Under the land use bylaw, yes, that would be
Okay.
prohibited.
All right, I just wanted that clarity. I was going to ask it in the next part anyway, so I thought I'd get it off the table right now.
Mr. Walsh?
And my, questions along those lines also. I know originally when we created this bylaw back a ways, I think it's 2010, ORE provides camping spaces for people who participate in their, whatever they're doing, and they, you bring in their horse trailer and it has a camping space in it, and they're allowed to park there. And I'm asking if this prevents that from happening on ORE property, because it is non-residential.
I had a question along the same way. That's the ORE land they own, and perhaps this is out of, I might be speaking out of order, because does the college, like I know the college have workers there all the time with their trailers and they sleep there, do they not? Is it, I'm just looking at Councillor Daly, he might know more than certainly I do.
Well, I'm not particularly sure of the people that camp at the college, but there is camping that is done at the college, whether it be alumni or rodeo or workers as well.
That affect that?
I think that would apply to that is the last sentence or part of this clause where it's prohibited in all other districts except as designated by council. So the operations of those institutions may have incorporated that. I'm not sure how it was in the past, but.
It's worth looking into. Councillor Walsh and then Councillor Cummings.
I kind of recognize the intent, that there's absentee landlords and private land that people access, but I think this needs to be rewritten somewhat, especially the last line. Temporary living accommodation and erection is prohibited on all districts except as designated by council, and I'm thinking that's probably not correct. We need people to get permits or permission just from the town for these type of things. I mean, rodeos happen at the college. People bring in their trailers that house horses and people. They park them there. And the same with ORE, Rotary, they all do it, and it's just, I think, it would be incumbent on us to make it easier for people to do this stuff than having to wait for a council.
Thank you. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm going to echo Councillor Walsh's concerns with these groups of bylaws. That yes, the intent is absolutely necessary so that we can get those individuals who are abusing our lands with the camping that we've seen in the past. But there's too many incidences throughout all of the town and all of the districts where this is a normal exemption that is not spoken to in here. And I'm even confused whether or not the wording of open space area allows camping at OR Hedges Campground as a town-owned facility. It's a town-owned recreational facility that, according to this rule, the way I'm reading it, you're not allowed to camp at anymore. Unless, of course, we designate it as a campground. So it seems to be a really pointed to one target, but it's kind of neglecting a lot of other targets of individuals that it's absolutely normal to do that sort of camping for the short-term period. I don't know how to reword it to make it more specific to those we want and those we don't want. When it comes to, we can choose to where to enforce and where not to enforce, that's a slippery slope when the law that we're making says this, but we choose to only apply that law in certain situations. So I think that does need to have some more clarification before I'll vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO Williams.
Thanks, Mayor Dell. So in council's land use bylaw, there's a district called RF. That stands for recreational facility. ORE and Rotary and OR Hedges Campground are all zoned RF. Camping is permitted in those districts. The college is between two jurisdictions, the county and the town, so it does depend on there. If council wishes to have more flexibility, perhaps the last clause could read, except where authorized by the CAO, for example. And we could then have our own process, but I don't think getting caught up in the what-ifs is necessary on this one, whereas the zoning right now does apply for that.
Well answered. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dole. And I just wanted to respond to that, and thank you very much, CEO Williams, for saying that, because that's exactly what I was going to say, that we do have that designation in those campground areas. And I would just like to see the temporary living accommodation line to say designated by CEO or his designate. And that way, we would be able to respond to things such as which Councillor Walsh has already mentioned about temporary living in perhaps a construction area where they might be doing some work over a longer period of time and need just to have a temporary space for employees and we don't have that room in town for them. I think it would probably solve the problem.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Wilson and then back to Councillor Cummings.
Actually, if I got to do a point of order first.
Go ahead.
We are in a public hearing. I'm wondering if it'd be more appropriate for us to close the public hearing, since there is no public, and move to the motion and debate the motion as is. Because that's what we're doing. We're debating a motion. We're not necessarily engaging in the public in a public hearing.
We're speaking, this is council comments, and that is exactly what we're doing. We're hearing the council comments from council at this time, and it is a public hearing, and public hearings are to take place during the second reading time, and it's for the to engage in debate and propose amendments, and then vote on the bylaw. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to the CEO, I just want to make sure I understand the comments that were made just a couple of minutes ago, because I do know, and we're coming up to, again, the Canada Day weekend, and just as I assume was last year at Rotary Park and at OR Hedges, not in the OR Hedges campground, but where Kirsten's Place is now being built, it was quite common, you know, for people to have their trailer units and campers there. So I just want to make sure under this RF designation, with this Canada Day and other tournaments coming up, people in those cases with Rotary and OR Hedges, again, not the campground, would be able to park from Thursday to Sunday or Monday while their tournament is on.
Thank you for the question and good memory and instance, in fact. So those two examples last year, the one at the what called the ZEC property on the east side of the campground, the Lions Club who operates our campground had an agreement with those campers there, so they shared in some of the revenue, but that zoning is still RF, so it would apply for this district as well. For the Spitfires tournament, the same thing. There was an understanding. We didn't charge them, but again, it is RF, so it would still be permitted here. To the topic of perhaps if there's workers on site, my first thought is I would rather direct people to proper living accommodations than people living on job sites. However, you can't plan for everything, right? So if the amendment is to, as you know, authorized by the CAO or designate, that would make sense as well.
Good, and just to make it clear again, I will just read you the point that the second reading is the appropriate stage for the council to engage in debate, propose amendments, and vote on the bylaw. So we can certainly start the stage there, and if there's no further comments from council at this time, Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and I just have a couple of comments. The first one is the definition of a tent. Do we consider that as our typical tent, canvas, nylon construction, or is that going to be also included in like cardboard shanties and so forth? That's one item because somebody could say that it's not a tent, but temporary living accommodations would be maybe grouped into all that. But the other thing it says here is 30 days per annum, right? And so there is a maximum time limitation on this as well. So I'm thinking our bases are covered on that, but I'm looking to the CAO for direction on that. So other than that, I agree with the amendment as well. I think that to keep us timely and making decisions in a timely manner, I think that's a great idea.
So the definition of it, no, it's, I don't think we specified it to that level. I'm not sure if I would want to. I think that is within the reasonable realm of interpretation, that anything can be a tent if we wish it to be a tent. But I think temporary living is more of the issue we're trying to tackle here. So a fair point, though. It's outside the box. Always trying to stump me, eh? And 30 days... I think this came up at first reading as well. This was within the bylaw before, it just didn't delineate between districts. And it's because there's people who do use their properties like for temporary guests, for example, or even, you know, children sleeping in the backyard, which my kids do. So we also want to accommodate people on their own property at the same time. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Good comments, and we'll go back to Councillor Walsh.
You know, just one other thought. I know I've seen overflow in parking lots like Walmart. And, you know, having used the Walmart parking lot once in Whitecourt, only because there was no other sites available, and I was pulling a trailer, and I did not want to drive all night, so it's not the most appealing place to park for the night, but it's usually noisy. So that type of thing too in town. I don't know if you've ever been in Panoka during there's rodeo, Stampede. Yeah, it's just wall-to-wall RVs everywhere. So I'm just curious how flexible we're going to be in this.
Another very good example, actually. Didn't come up in this process, but in my time here at some point, we did ask Walmart about camping, because I know in the States, for example, Walmart provides actual, like, some RV plugins in some instances. Here they don't, and Cornerstone, the previous owner of the shopping district, also prohibits it on their lands. So people still do it, though. To your question, I would say it's something that's left up to capacity and discretion, that we're not looking to penalize people who legitimately can't find, say, a camper during Oldstoberfest or who's hauling a trailer west to east and has to stop. It's not something we'll try to enforce. It really is focused on that that troubling behavior that we're seeing arise in right now. And yeah, it is a catch-all, but I'm not sure if we can really avoid it without having discretion within our bylaw enforcement regime either.
Good conversations around the table. I will bring it back to our municipal land use planner for any closing comments.
I have nothing further this time. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. I have no more comments from council at this time, so I will close this public hearing at 1:48 p.m. Now we're going to the bylaw itself, and we're looking for second reading. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that the bylaw number 2024-20 be given second reading as amended, and the amendment would be the designated by CAO or his designate.
Thank you. We have an amendment on the bylaw for second reading. Any further questions? I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. I am now looking for third and final reading, please. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that bylaw number 2024-20 be given third reading as amended.
Thank you. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time here. I believe you'll still have one more with us. Page 24, please, in your agenda now. And we are going to be dealing with bylaw 2024-22 and 2024-23. So starting with 2024-22, would you like to introduce this? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. As mentioned in my introduction during the land use bylaw, the community standards bylaw is before council today with much of the same reason. And the amendments which were introduced a month ago in first reading are among the same vein to amend the languages and introduce the concept of open spaces and its definition and matching the language in both the land use bylaw and what you'll see upcoming in the traffic bylaw. So, happy to take any questions on this as well, though.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you. So the same amendment would be required here for 5.2. It's changing it from designated by council as designated by CAO. I believe that's the only other reference to that in this particular section of the bylaws. Thank you.
You? All right, we'll go right to the bylaws then, 2024-22. Looking for second reading, please. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council gives second reading to bylaw 2024-22, amending the community standards bylaw 2023-06 as amended.
Do we have to state the amendment because this is a separate item? Yes.
Right, amended as authorized by the CAO or designated.
Thank you. That'll be added to your motion, Councillor Wilson. Very good. Any further questions? Call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And please, third and final reading. Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council gives third reading to bylaw number 2024-22, amending the community standards bylaw 2023-06 as amended in the following amendments as already discussed.
As stated in the second reading of the above. No further questions? I call the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Very good. We're moving down to bylaw 2024-23. I'm looking for second reading. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council give second reading to bylaw number 2024-23, amending the traffic bylaw 2024-04 as presented, correct? Because we're not making an amendment to it.
Presented. Does council have questions? I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And third and final reading, Councillor Wilson. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council gives third reading to bylaw 2024-23, amending the traffic bylaw 2024-04 as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. It's fun when everybody puts their hands up at the same time. I call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. I'll call on you next, Councillor Daly. All right. Thank you very much. We're going down to page 29 now, please. Page 29, again, we start with a public hearing. And I will call the public hearing to order at 1:54 p.m., please. And the public hearing is going to be for 2024-21 land use bylaw. And at this time, we have the development officer, municipal planner, Mr. Sloan here, and he will give us the details of the proposed bylaw.
Thank you again. This land use bylaw amendment came as an application received from a property owner for an existing building in the Uptown C1 commercial district. The property owner is seeking to develop residential suites below grade on the building, which does not meet the definition that is a permitted use in C1 for mixed-use commercial at grade, which allows for commercial uses on the ground floor and residential uses above the commercial uses specifically. So in reviewing this application and considering previous applications that the town has received and approved for mixed-use developments in the uptown area, for site-specific amendments, allowing residential uses in various configurations that are not above commercial. This has evolved into a proposed amendment to add a definition, or to add a permitted use in the C1 district for mixed-use development, where the main, to add mixed-use development where the principal at-grade use facing the street is commercial, and residential uses can be at-grade or below grade as long as they are not the principal entrance at the front of the building as a permitted use. So the recommendation here, I guess we're still in the public hearing, but is to approve, or that bylaw 2021 be given second reading as presented and third reading as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Sloan. And once again, we have no presentations from the public hearing here, so I'll go directly to ask for council comments. Any questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, and through you to the CEO. I don't have any issue specific to this amendment to the bylaw. Certainly support it. I don't want to pollute the issue, though, or the topic, or what's in front of us, but I will risk doing that anyway, and you can correct me as I go along. But I just, my question for the CEO is, so we're seeing an uptick in development, residential certainly, lots of activity going on with apartments, with duplexes, with suites, all geared around our issues from the housing assessment previously done to address low vacancy or vacancy rates, but as well affordability. And so my question is, and it may not specifically apply in this case, but what vehicles, or at what point, or does council and administration even have to address to ensure that from an affordability perspective, it's meeting the criteria, right? However you define the criteria of whether that's 30% of income or some other CMHC metric. At what point do we need to start looking at, if at all, requirements to make sure that home ownership is affordable, not just dealing with vacancy rentals?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Wilson. In larger centers, for larger developments, it's commonplace to have a minimum number of affordable units. Let's say for a 100-unit apartment, you ought to supply 5, 10, 15, 20%. And I just know by dealing recently with a developer from Vancouver Island that is more commonplace there. For rural Alberta, the town of Old specifically, I don't think we're there yet, that the free market can decide that itself, and landlords will build what they can rent. However, there's other things in place right now too, and the biggest thing being the CMHC, the Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation, which by whatever means of effort or intention has become essentially the insurer, sometimes the lender of choice for a lot of housing development. And to access the majority of their programs, there are affordability metrics applied. So most of the developers, I would say, on a large scale, so the multiplexes and the large developments, they're accessing CMHC funding or financing to some degree. So it is already at the federal level through the it's certainly the favorable financing and insurability these mortgages have through the federal program. For the town of Olds to implement that, I don't want to say it would never happen, but certainly that we're just starting this uptake in development. We won't really see the results of what the end product is for at least another year, probably 24 months for the larger developments, once they're ready to open, it could be a conversation we revisit. But for now, I would say I'm comfortable just with the understanding we need housing, and the more inventory the more supply we dump on the demand, it will work itself out. But
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Seeing none then, I will ask our Mr. Sloan if he has any closing comments.
No, not at this time, thanks.
Thank you very much for your time with us then, and I will now close the public hearing at 2 p.m. We will now move to bylaw 2024-21 for second reading, please, and I'll go to, let's see, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that bylaw number 2024-21 be given second reading as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. I will then call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And third and final reading, Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that bylaw number 2024-21 be given third reading as presented.
I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Page 34, please, of the agenda, and this, again, we will be going through 2024-31, looking for all three readings today, and I'm going to start with first reading, please. Go ahead, Count. Who put their hand up here? Harvey, thank you very much. You got to go higher.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to move that bylaw number 2024-31, amending the Code of Conduct Review Committee bylaw 2024-19 be given first reading as presented.
Thank you, and once again, this is just an error being identified in a past bylaw 2024-19, and today is an amendment to correct it. So just for your information, for any viewers, are there any questions? Very good, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried, and I'm looking for second reading, please. Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I move that bylaw 2024-31, amending the Code of Conduct Review Committee bylaw 2024-19 be given second reading as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? Thank you. We are now looking for unanimous consent. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that unanimous consent be given for consideration of third reading of bylaw 2024-31, amending the Code of Conduct Review Committee bylaw 2024-19 as presented.
I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Third and final reading. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that bylaw number 2024-31, amending the Code of Conduct Review Committee bylaw 2024-19 be given third reading as presented.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. We are moving down to new business at this time, page 36 of your agenda, please. And this is for sponsorship. The first recommendation, I will state that I am appointing the CEO and one councillor to this. The CAO represents the town, and I would like to ask at this point, how many councillors or who would like to attend the golf tournament along with the CAO? If you are interested, please raise your hands. Question, go ahead. Well, it's a big golf tournament. It's a silver sponsorship for the Mountain View Seniors Housing Golf Classic. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. As a member of the Mountain View Seniors Housing Board, I typically golf in this tournament, but I also pay for my own way to go because I believe that as a board member we should. That's just my only opinion, and since we're on the board, we should be supporting our own tournament. So while I do want to be there, and I will be there, I will pay for myself. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very good to hear that you're supporting your board. Any further councillors that would put their name forward to golf? Councillor Daly, anyone else? Okay. Councillor Daly, I would like that then, no further, you had your hand up. Would you like to golf? Okay. Well, then we'll be appointing the CAO, our CAO, and Councillor Daly. So I would ask for a motion, please. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move the council approve silver sponsorship of $1,500 to be provided to Mountain View Seniors Housing Golf Classic and appoint CAO and Councillor Daly to attend the 14th Annual Charity Golf Classic hosted at Carstairs Community Golf Club on Thursday, September 12th, 2024. And I just wanted to make sure that we had, that this should say the foundation, because this is actually run by the foundation, and I'm just wanted to make sure that it was written properly within the motion. I think it should say Mountain View Seniors Housing Foundation Golf Classic. Friendly amendment to my own motion.
Thank you. I would agree with that as well. I'll call for the vote then. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And item 2 is that council approve. Well, we're going to have to discuss this first. C.O. Williams.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So the second item on here is left as a blank, but with corresponding options in the attachments, because the town has not traditionally sponsored Summer Synergy, but as council discussed briefly before, that you would entertain coming forward to council for consideration. So I believe the options, which Mercy is diligently putting on the screen for you, are between $500 and $10,000. So if council sees fit, there's multiple opportunities and options on the table.
Well, I'd like to open the floor to council for any questions or ideas they'd like to share. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. I do recognize that this does bring quite a few people, several hundred people probably, to town during this time because it is in coordination with the Calgary Stampede. But, I mean, I would be willing to say that we'd either be a supporting sponsor or a friend sponsor at this point in time. One or the other would be as up to council to decide which they would feel would be more appropriate, but
Thank you, and I would also encourage that. I was looking at a supporting sponsor, knowing the amount of people that spend money, eat, and sleep here that weekend. We definitely, the support would be worth it, but I'd still open the floor to any further comments. Well, I'll go ahead. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Yeah, no, I was just going to echo those comments. Yeah, I'm fine with $500 or $1,000 sponsorship for this event. I don't think I would support anything higher than that, but I'm fine at either of those amounts.
Okay, we've got 500 or 1,000. Go ahead, you have a question? Councillor Ryan?
Not a question, just a comment, and I think that this is a really good event. There are a lot of people who participate in this. It draws a lot of people to town. I'm fine with $1,000, but I would like to know, I thought I saw it in here, and forgive me for not seeing it, but what was our budget for this? And we've just put $1,500 towards the golf, so what's our maximum allowable budget that we have for this? For not just this event, but for total? I think it was
We'll go to
$5,000
the
or something.
CEO for that.
So the current balance prior to MVSH Foundation was $58.25. So $43.25 is left remaining for the rest of the year. So
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would recommend $1,000. Is
Yeah,
council
I'm fine with
comfortable
1,000.
with that?
Yeah.
Very good. A motion, please? Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that council approve a $1,000 sponsorship, $1,000 in sponsorship for 2024 Summer Synergy.
If there's no further questions, I'll call for the vote. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. And the third motion, please, for the 10,000 for Oldstoberfest. Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council approve sponsorship in the amount of $10,000 to the 2024 Oldstoberfest.
Thank you. Do we have questions? Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. So my question, though, is, and again, I certainly support this event. It's now moving from 2 days to 3 days, and again, generates a lot of interest and brings activity and people under that umbrella of sport tourism. But my understanding from reading the materials is the $10,000 will exhaust the funds in this budget then, correct? We will have, call it whatever you want, no extra, no contingency, no reserve, should something else come forward and still 6 months remaining for this year.
That's correct, and I think my Office of the CIO report is up due in July, which you'll see a breakdown of Mountain View Power to date. The $15,000 budgeted for was for the $5,000 towards the volleyball tournament, if you recall, and then this. So this was already budgeted for. We do still have a promotional line item, though, which we're looking to do some other avenues with, which aren't quite sponsorship, but more participation, I guess, as vendors and trade shows and what have you. But you're right. There's no further revenue left, but also no further asks expected, I guess I should say. But yeah.
Okay. Definitely, most definitely. Okay, and that allays my concerns somewhat, assuming you're right through Mountain View Power or that there is that potential. Because otherwise, I would lean towards this and to maybe slightly reduce this amount, even just to provide a $1,500 cushion. But I respect the CAO's comments. Because the other thing overarching this for me, and we briefly discussed this before, is the town does contribute protective services for this event, right, at our own cost. So we are certainly supporting this beyond any pure financial donation, right?
Thank you, and I do understand, and you correct me if I'm wrong, CO Williams, that the Oldstoberfest committee and/or leader reports back to us and gives us the update of what the overall benefit to the town of Olds is on this. Oh,
Yes, and that comes 8 months or so after the fact, which you saw Jillian here a month or so ago. One thing we're trying to do, and we did talk about since the third day increasing the sponsorship with some some goals in mind, which we didn't end up going forward with for this RFD. But everything we have is anecdotal right now. We know it's a very well-attended event, thousands of people, probably certainly the largest event that Olds has in a year. How we measure that, like you did with like the Coyote Curling event, for example, where a third-party firm was hired, we're not quite prepared to invest that dollar amount yet. But we are trying year over year through business engagement, through our own staff's attendance participation to better measure the effect that has. But we're not quite there yet, but certainly does have a positive effect.
and Councillor Wilson, when you were talking about protective services, CO Williams, is that the enhanced policing portion?
Correct. We do pay for the RCMP. The officers generally come from outside the detachment area on essentially overtime pay to do security. So
Very good. I'd like a motion. Sorry, another question, Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, just some clarity that we still have a few thousand left in our sponsorship budget, right? Not. Yeah.
for the town sponsorship, Mountain View Power under a separate budget. This is all we budgeted for were the curling and the Oldstoberfest. So
Okay.
after this 10,000, that one will be exhausted.
Yeah,
But there's-
just was looking for clarification.
Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. Directed to CAO Williams. So in the sponsorship package, this will be listed as Mount View Power then? And any advertisements that take place at Oldstoberfest will also be identified as Mount View Power being the sponsor?
Not quite. We do have an arrangement where we have both logos, and that's most probably most prominent on the horses with the flags. As you can tell, I'm not a rodeo person, so I don't know what that's actually called. But one of the flags is the Town of Olds, and the other is Mountain View Power, among the 5 or 6 other title sponsors. So we do get both forms of advertising in there under this one donation. So.
We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Daly already, do we not? That's correct, okay. If there's no further questions, I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right, to page 53, please, of the agenda now, and that is our Town of Olds strategic plan. Very nice. I was impressed in reading that. Would you speak to C.O. Williams?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Dell. And admittedly, this is something for first conversation. It is best to come to a community of the whole, but I strike when the iron's hot, and we had some room on this agenda, so I figured if council's good, providing some feedback on it, even if you don't wish to pass it today, that's perfectly fine. But we added the advocate. We did reduce the time frame. I think it was briefly discussed that we didn't want to go too far into the next council term, and then the priorities were updated as council directed previously, and then the last page, the advocacy piece, which council has passed previously, and I added some of the more updated things since that 12 months have passed or so. But again, if something has to change, certainly accept as amended, or if you want to bring it back to a future meeting. There's not a big rush on this one. But happy to take any questions.
Yes, I certainly like your comment, when the iron's hot. I'll have to remember that one. That's great. Between you and Councillor Wilson. Before we put a motion on the floor, well, maybe we'll put a motion on the floor first, unless there's people that want to speak to it, because then we won't be taking it as presented. So is there any comments in regards to the presentation? I thought it was an excellent job. All right, then a motion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council approves the updated strategic plan as presented, and I too very much like the format that this came through to us.
Thank you very much. That's great. All those in favor? That's carried. Well done. We're moving into our development permits now on page 63, and we certainly do have Sherry Edgington here, our development officer. Please welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councillors, and CAO Williams. This application is for the location of 5001 54th Street, and it's located in the medium-density residential R3 area, and this is where the Mountain View Emergency Shelter was previously approved. They are currently seeking that a 6-foot-high chain-link fence be added to replace the existing fence that is currently on site. If you look at the site plan here, you'll be able to get some more configuration of the property lines and where the future/existing fence currently exists. At the time when the application was made for the emergency shelter, the property lines were assumed to be located at the fence line. However, the applicant had hired a survey company to stake the locations and determined that the existing fence was located outside of the property boundaries. So the variances that they're requesting for their fence is to have a 6-foot-high fence in the front yard, to allow the fence to be located outside of the property boundaries at the exact same locations as the existing fences that are currently located there. The fence height around the east, south, and west sides of the property meets the land use bylaw, and it's in the opinion of the Development Authority that the 6-foot tall fence at the locations proposed does not negatively impact the adjacent properties, as they are owned by the Town of Olds, and there currently are not any plans to do anything with that land or expand that road at this time.
Yeah, and I'd like for the viewers' sake to understand, this is currently for the future security purposes, and that's, in my mind, very, very crucial. But I'd certainly leave that with my council to add or discuss if they so choose. Do we have questions for our Sherry? Okay, we've got two. I'll start with Councillor Daly and Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to our development officer. So is there reasoning why they're not following the property line with their fence? And my second question is then, who would retain ownership of the north and west fence in the event of us then moving forward with some sort of development in that area?
This property is the town of Old's property, and we have a lease with the emergency shelter. We do own the property that is outside of, adjacent to where the fence is. So if we needed to make any changes to the fence, we would obviously deal with that and proceed with making arrangements with the emergency shelter.
So clarification again, why are they not following the property line with the fence?
Sorry about that. I forgot that one. They assumed that the existing fence was on the property line, and they based on information that was provided from the municipality itself.
Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I'm not sure that answers Council Daly's question. However, I'll move on to mine. And just through you to our CAO, actually, would be, I just want to make sure that any kind of fencing that would go up would not inhibit us accessing the property. We do have some plans for that further location behind there for snow dump, and so I just want to be assured that it's not going to be any kind of deterrent from using that space in the future.
Yes, thanks for the question. And to just double back, based on the property line, the fence would just be too close to the structure itself, where the foundation's already been built. So the existing fence, which is now painted purple, is what we're allowing through this this variance. But to your question, in tandem with this, we'll be moving back the gate that's currently there to access the OR hedges and the current snow dump on the south side of this future development. So no, we have no concerns with us accessing it on our own time frame. So.
Were you okay, Councillor Daly, with your answer?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. All right, any further comments? Very good, then our development officer, any further closing comments?
Not at this point, thanks.
Thank you very much. Then I would ask for a motion, please. I see Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council approve development permit application DP 24-096 as presented, subject to the conditions listed in the attached draft development permit.
Very good. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Sherry?
Thank you.
Very good. Moving down to page 68 in your agenda now, please, and we will go to 6A, correspondence and information. I'll have a motion on the floor first, please. Councillor Walsh?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the correspondence and information report ending June 10th, 2024 be received for information.
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. Does council have any questions in regards to the items of the correspondence presented in the RFD? I see none, so I will now call for the vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Ryan.
Sorry, Mayor Dahl, I had
Go
used
ahead.
my wrong hand because I
That's
was
fine, that's
flipping
fine.
papers with my other one and you probably didn't see it. Interesting, the letter from the county with regards to ICF, I would imagine we will be sending a letter back to them with regards to responses and discussion for a closed session. Thank you.
That's a good question. Thank you very much. It absolutely will be returned. Any further questions? Councillor Daly.
I would just like to comment on, first of all, thanking administration and Mayor Dahl for sending the letter to the Minister of Public Safety. And I would just like to say that in his response, I believe that there has not been a real full disclosure of the long-term plan that's going to be happening for victim services. And I feel that this is a generic letter that has been sent out probably to multiple communities, not addressing our concerns.
I understand you may be correct. If If our CEO would like to add anything further, you're more than welcome.
I think Councillor Daly summarized it well.
Thank you for sharing that. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dolan. I just have a quick question on the same lines. We had also sent this letter off to our MLA, Nathan Cooper, correct? And have we received a response from him? And perhaps maybe we could get a meeting to discuss this further.
I do not believe we have received a response to date. I have been watching for it. But thank you for bringing that up. I'll log that. All right, we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Walsh at this time. I will now call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And our CAO report now on page 79 in your agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I have a couple verbal items to add, and is there anything here? Oh, the May reporter problem stats. As you can see, the road issues in parks and trails is ongoing, and generally road issues in May are about street sweeping and potholes. Street sweeping has been completed, and potholes, I'll touch on that in a moment as well. Parks and trails, we are a little bit behind, no question. Weather, personnel, items to fault, but we are making a concerted effort to improve things starting immediately. For a few other updates, back alleys, common concern in spring after the frost heaves get out of our way. Back alley grading will start this week. We're going to do it all in-house, and it shouldn't take more than 2 weeks to finish. Weather dependent is the famous term, though. You may have seen in the newspaper advertisements in our section, we have various requests for qualifications, RFQs out right now, and those are largely our third-party road repair. We have utility digs, large patch paving repairs, and one other, I think, concrete as well. So we expect July and August that we'll have the bulk of those repairs done. But our in-house crew, both we have the IR paver, the infrared paver, doing multiple repairs a week, along with our bucket and shovel crews for those emergent repairs that can't quite wait for our IR paver crew to get there, as they have a predetermined schedule. What else? Olds Fire Department. You may have seen earlier in May there was a rooftop campout. They ended up breaking their $10,000 fundraising goal to $12,000, I believe it was, in support of muscular dystrophy. Annual event now, and they always do great. They were among the top performing fundraisers in the province for the MD Day. The last thing you also may have seen on a press release we did. We thought it was that important, but certainly on social media as well. On May 25th, I believe it was, the Olds Aquatic Centre welcomed about 250 individuals from across Alberta and a bit of Saskatchewan too, for a special Olympic swim meet. Great to see that success. We saw a lot of positive feedback both from our own staff and those participants, and it's great to see. A lot of people obviously focus on that core infrastructure, roads, pipes, etc., myself included, but it's a very good reminder of the value that these recreation facilities have to people and society as a whole when you see events like that happen. So kudos to the OAC staff for that effort. And the rest of my report, Madam Mayor, is in closed session.
Certainly agree with your comment you just shared of the aquatic center. Honestly, when you're building a community, if you don't have an aquatic center, sometimes they just move on to the next community. So thanks for sharing that. Does council have any questions for our CEO? Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Not necessarily a question, but I just want to comment on, I've had several complaints regarding dandelions and unsightly grass. Well, crops is what one person referred to it. I have been encouraging individuals to go through Report a Problem so we can track those calls. I appreciate people bringing it to my attention, but I also recognize what's going on in the community, and I thank you for your comments with the challenges that the our administration and our staff have been faced with. And hopefully we'll get caught up sooner than later. And again, I would continue to encourage people to go through Report a Problem.
Right, and certainly the things like the weed whacking, that is due to improve here right away. Dandelions, they will never go away. So just disclaimer up front here, in case anyone's hoping for something different.
Positive side, though, I have been seeing on my walks a lot of people doing behind their fences and just volunteering to do it, and it's really good to see the spirit of the communities doing that. Councillor Daly, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl, but I think Councillor Blatz has kind of hit on the same topic as I had heard at Coffee with Councillors in regards to the rotation of the mowing and also the trimming of the grass after the mowing is done. And so I just wanted to comment that, or have CAO comment so that the public is aware that efforts were also put in other areas for that time for our investigation. If I remember you commenting all hands on deck for doing the manhole investigations and so forth. So I just wanted to have CAO comment on that, and I think you did a good job. Thank you.
All right, and I could provide some more color too, because the utilities issues aside, we have directed a lot more parks resources towards sports fields. Rotary Park in particular, just something when it was built, we didn't quite understand the level of care that was required to maintain it, let alone improve it. So obviously things that have to fall by the wayside without an increase in resources are things like green space maintenance. But I think we have a balance achieved, and hopefully see visual effects this week.
Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, and through to CAO Williams. So going then a little further on your response to Councillor Daly, I'm hoping then that during service level review we can have a fulsome discussion in regards to the time it takes for the Rotary Park and our recreation sports fields, and perhaps look at increasing the number of summer students that we have, because that's when we really need to do the bulk of the work, and they are probably some of our best resources for that type of work.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. Yeah, the June 26th, which is the next one, there's a couple community service things on there. I don't think green space maintenance will be. It might. Don't quote me though. Just not a fulsome discussion, I guess. And just like snow clearing, I prefer not doing it while we're in season. If we just wait till we're on the back end of it. But to your point about summer students as well, we still have our net. I think let's call it 18. I can't remember the exact number, but we have also redeployed those based on Public Works needs as well. So Public Works now has 2 students instead of 1. Utilities took on 2 students instead of 1. So Parks got the short end of the stick there. So there's it's not so much about execution. It's about resources we're giving them based on our acres we have to maintain and the sports fields that we do have to bring back to life as well. So.
Bring back to life. That's another good one. Okay, Councillor Wilson and then Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. And just a question through you to the CEO, and then I'll offer a very brief comment on natural growth vegetation, as I prefer to call it. Just wondering if the CEO is, excuse me, any feedback or any observations on the IR paver. Certainly the IR paver is pretty slick. When I see those repairs that are done, they're what I'd say platinum level, so kudos to the operators and our staff when on those related repairs. But are there any challenges around efficiency and the time it takes to use the paver and do a repair? Certainly it's going to depend on the size of the pavement being repaired, but any observations, comments? We've had it now for 2 years, I think.
Yeah, and it is still a hot debate even internally. Full disclaimer, I'm a full supporter of the IR paver. I like the quality that it does. And I see it, my drive home on Winter Drive. If you take that road as though, those now 2-year-old repairs are standing up far better than our shovel and bucket ever will. But the weakness still remains. It's a slow process. You have to let the machine sit there over top and do its thing, and it's not much else we can do. then wait for that process to finish. But overall, I do believe the quality of repairs is worth that effort. It's not great for all our different needs, but it's another tool, and I stand by it.
Move to Councillor Ryan, just go ahead and finish.
Yeah, just my brief comment again on what I'll call natural vegetation growth. Dandelion, and it is a mindset or a paradigm shift that we need to also get our heads around. But dandelions are good for bees, so that's all I'll say.
Love that comment, that's great, and we like honey. Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. It's a hard act to follow. I just have a question on when we'll see flowers, and I have a kudo to go to our town staff at the pool, who I was talking to during our FCM convention, somebody from a northern community who said they purposely stopped in Olds on their way down to Calgary to because the family wanted to visit our pool because I heard such good things about it, and she said they had a great time. So I just thought I would pass that along. So kudos and a flower comment.
Okay, I know the flowers are here. I think it was fairly recent, so I'm going to say this week, and hopefully no one proves me a liar. But I'm pretty sure it's this week. Okay.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure the public's looking forward to that. I think I'm ready for a motion. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I make the motion that the Chief Administrative Officer report be accepted for information.
Thank you. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. We had a great session of discussion, and we will be going into a closed meeting now. So I will state that when council goes into a closed session for continued participation in the virtual council meeting, please stay online in the live stream meeting platform, and the meeting stream will be replaced by a graphic. And when the graphic is removed, that will indicate that the meeting is ready to reconvene. At this time, I would like to get a motion to move to closed. Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that we move into closed session at 2:37 in relationship to FOIP Section 25, 17, and 16, with all in attendance that we see here today. So.
And for the viewing purpose, Section 25 is Intermunicipal Cooperation Committee, ICC update, Section 17 is a personal update, and Section 16 is real estate. Thank you very much. And who will be staying in the room, Ms. CAO Williams? All present? Perfect. I will call for the vote at this time. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thank you, that was quite loud. For all of those that waited, we have now moved into a rise and report session at this time, and I am going to call on Deputy Mayor, please, for item 1.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that council direct administration and Mayor Dahl to reply to Reeve Alber's letter regarding the Intermunicipal Cooperation Committee on behalf of all of council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Blatz. I will now call for the vote. All in favor? That's carried. And item 2, please, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that we accept the report on personnel update for information.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan, and we'll call for the vote, please. All in favor? That's carried, and I'll move over to Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Mayor Dahl. I move that we accept the information in regards to real estate for information.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. I will call for the vote. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, council members and viewers, for your time today, and I now adjourn the meeting at 4 p.m.